what I was feeling during those darkest periods of times, it was a gift. And it was literally what I said. It showed up for me to show me that something is wrong and that I need to heal it. If that depression didn't show up in my life, I would probably have continued living the way I was living, and I don't know what would happen then.
Hello, this is Voice Your Mind podcast from Listening. Welcome to our show where we talk about the unheard who have no one to share about their insecurities and past trauma, or even having difficulty opening up to people when feeling down. On this show, we will be discussing everything about mental health, depression, and suicide. We listening are just ordinary people who are or were in your similar state and are currently encouraging ourselves and learning to improve our state of mind. So here we are taking a step towards motivating you to get better with us every day of the week. So without any further delay, let's get started with the episode.
Hello and welcome to the show. And our today's guest is Sasha Tarasova, and she is a transformational life coach, NLP practitioner, creator of Conscious Sapiens, an artist and a DJ. She has suffered from deep depression in her past and got herself out of it. And now she is on a mission to share her story and inspire others to heal their past and love their life. And so that's about it about her very shortly. And today we're going to learn more about her journey, and we're going to talk a lot about like personal development and how we can heal ourselves and everything about it to mental health. Saying that, so how are you doing today?
Hi, Mahmoud. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome and thanks for coming on the show. Okay, so tell me about your story. So how did everything got started, and like this as it started? So tell me about your journey at first, then we're gonna go head out from there.
All right. Where do I even begin? It
Yeah.
started, I think, like for most people, it started back in childhood with, certain things that happened in my childhood, certain ways that my family behaved that made me believe that I had to earn love and that I was not, let's say, good enough just for who I was. Like, for example, my parents were very strict when it came to grades. So I would get punished for getting a bad grade, and I would get pretty much nothing for getting a good grade. So already from then, I learned that I needed to like perform extra well to be accepted and to be loved, and to have approval of my family, let's say. And then as I grew up, I found myself in a pattern of not really following what I wanted to do, but rather this pattern continued trying to, get the approval of my parents, doing what they were telling me to do. So I would study something that I wasn't really passionate about, and I didn't do what I wanted instead. And then I would get a job that my family would think is, good enough, but I personally didn't really like doing it. And then little by little, these things accumulated, and I started feeling really not happy with my life, even though my life was pretty good. I mean, I was living in Dubai, I was married, I had a well paid job, and I had nothing to complain about, except deep inside, I was really not happy with where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. And that slowly developed into a depression because I just kept neglecting myself and my needs. And instead, I was trying to please everybody else and not really listen to my own needs. So this is how it started. And it took me a few years of personal development and really trying to find out who I am and what I want, and really reconnected with myself in order to get out of that place, because it literally felt like I was being someone else. I was playing this role that like this face that I created to interact with the world, but I was not actually allowing myself to be me because I thought I would not be accepted for who I am. So it took a lot of time to allow myself to be that person and to get back into loving that person. And few years later, a few years of personal development and healing later, I discovered NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, and it's one of my favorite modality. It's a branch of psychology, and I've used that for myself, and I'm using that now with my clients to help them heal much easier and much faster than what I had to go through. And honestly, and for today, I can say that I'm definitely in the best place in my life, mentally and emotionally, and in terms of happiness. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so I mean, the amazing at the end, absolutely, not the beginning, as we already know. Okay, so I really want to know about like your how did this thought of getting the need of approval came into place in the first place. Um, so you mentioned that your pet like you always needed like everything you needed to do you did in the past was for getting the approval of your parents or others. Okay, so how did this came in?
Well, I think this came in because my parents divorced very early. I was like 2 years old or something. So being separated from a parent figure is a quite traumatic for a small child, because this is where they get their sense of safety. And without having that unconditional love, it's a human need to have love. And if you don't have it from your parents because they're in the middle of a divorce, you kind of start to struggle, and you kind of feel that you're not good enough. You're missing out on that love. So as soon as I started living with my parents again, I started doing my best to try and have their attention, because for so many years they were not there for me. So I think it has to do a lot with that.
Okay, it's really interesting because most people don't think about this in that way. So let's say most people think that it is my perspective, like not I don't know about every single person. Okay, so most people as I think that most people think that everything that's happening right now is the result of what is happening to them at that moment. Like this is, yeah, so most people avoid the part of how they grew up. And you the thing you mentioned is like how about uh, not getting the right amount of attention from your parents, which resulted in or like family traumas, which is one example of it is divorce. Okay, so so how can a person understand if okay, so I mentioned two scenarios. Okay, so how can a person actually understand that if he is suffering from any issue of his childhood, which is a result of his childhood, or is it happening because of anything happening to him at the moment, him or her? And I'm
Well,
sorry, I'm sorry if I made that statement very confusing. I'm sorry about that before that.
that's all right. Well, the thing is, between the ages 0 to 7, this is where we learn the majority of our beliefs, and this is where our character gets formed as children. So most of the stuff that we pick up from family, from the environment, from our parents, from our friends, happens between these ages, 0 to 7. So it is highly likely that whatever is happening in your life right now probably comes from there. And whatever the beliefs that are formed during that time, they will then continue to influence for the rest of your life, how you think, how you perceive the world, what you believe in. And based on those beliefs, this is how you're going to behave and act. So whatever is happening in your life today, in your adulthood, is the result of your behavior and actions and thinking from the past. Correct?
Okay.
So I would argue that for majority of people, majority of their issues are coming from either 0 to 7 or 0 to 14 years old, because this is where our psyche gets formed, and this is where we pick up the majority of our unconscious programming and unconscious beliefs and everything like that.
Okay, so that's interesting. However, like I've got one question, like one serious question here. So how can actually people work on their belief, like that belief system, that let's say that unconscious belief or like processes? Let's say they know because of any issues or like any specific events in their childhood, like they grew up to the state which they're in. Now they want to change it to be a better person. And so
Mhm.
what can they do and how can they do it?
Okay, so first, it's not so easy to find that limiting belief in yourself because it's unconscious, right? So
Absolutely.
most people don't even know that they have them. So it takes either somebody else to point it out for them, or it takes a lot of self-awareness to discover that they have a limiting belief. And then another thing is that a lot of these limiting beliefs, we don't even remember the event where it comes from consciously. Subconsciously, the subconscious remembers everything, but consciously we may not even know where it's coming from. We may have forgotten our childhood event. So in order to work with them, there's a few ways. There's the longer way where you're doing your affirmations, you're trying to rewire that belief, you're trying to journal about it, and you're trying to meditate on it, and that works, but it takes longer because that belief you lived with it for how many 20, 30 years. So it's going to take some time to consciously change it, right? And there's a shortcut to doing that. Is This is where NLP comes in. This is what I work with, and this is where I work with your subconscious mind, and we find out the belief, and we don't even need to know where it comes from. But together, using NLP methodology, we can rewire that belief just within a few sessions. So we can take the belief, we can get it out of your subconscious, and we can change it to a more empowering belief.
Okay, so how does that NP actually work? So I have heard about it, but like got no idea, like literally no idea how this thing is. The first time I heard like the term NLP, I thought it is something illegal because yeah, oh, trust me,
Okay,
yeah,
so NLP works with the subconscious, and subconscious is basically our nervous system. So, for example, your heart is beating subconsciously, right? You're not controlling your heartbeat consciously, or your breathing, or things like that. Like all these processes in your body, all of that happens unconsciously. So, we're working with your body, your mind, and your unconscious mind, and language. Because neuro stands for the nervous system, um, linguistics stands for language, and programming stands for basically figuring out what patterns are you running today in your thinking, in your behavior, and in your beliefs, and basically changing those patterns. That's what we do, and we do that using the subconscious mind. We do that using the language, and we do that using the body. So some techniques might involve like you walking around and doing some funny things. Some other techniques might involve just talking to yourself in a certain way, and some other techniques will involve more like visualizing things and playing with your subconscious mind. It's a very big thing. It's hard to explain it in just
yeah,
one simple
absolutely.
sentence, but it's in short, it basically looks at your current programming and figuring out by the way you think, behave, and what you believe in, and changing that in the way that you want it to be.
Okay, got it.
And it's done absolutely painlessly, and it's very efficient, and it's very simple actually. A lot of people are surprised how simple these methods are, and they work pretty much instantly.
So how does a session look like? So like a regular session look like? Is it uh, someone like laying down and talking about his life and stuff, or like I think that's therapy, but I've got no clue related to this. How does a session usually look like in
Well,
terms of?
it really depends what we're doing together. If we're going for my full program, which is a 6 months program, the first 10 to 12 sessions is going to be mindset work. So it's going to be me asking you some questions and getting the answers out. Then there's going to be some homework to do, some digging in the past and looking at some past events. And after that is done, after we already got everything out onto the surface, we know what we're working with. Then we go into the clearing sessions, and this is where it's basically visualization in your head, where I guide you through a process where we're working with those events. We're basically removing the emotions from all of the events. And once all of the negative emotions are gone, so anger, sadness, guilt, hurt, shame, fear, once all of those emotions are removed, you're no longer emotionally attached to those events. So they no longer trigger you anymore. And once that is done, then we start going for limiting beliefs, and then we remove the limiting beliefs. And after that is done, then we start looking at, okay, what is it do we want, and how can we change the behaviors, change the thinking, and change the everyday habits to achieve what you want. Because in the past, you probably know what you want. Like, I want to achieve whatever, this amount of money, or I want to get married, or I want to lose 20 kilos. But for whatever reason, you're not taking the steps, right? And that's most probably because subconsciously somewhere there's like a belief in there that, oh, but if I lose all those kilos, maybe something happened to me, something like some kind of fear. Or like, I don't know, your parents, in my case, your parents were divorced, and subconsciously you're afraid to get married because you know you're going to get hurt. So the mind is a very, very complicated and amazing thing. I'm like really fascinated by it. Like, what's happening in the subconscious of a person's, like, they don't even know what's happening. So my work is getting it out to figure out what is happening and then changing it.
So I like one thing I like to say, like, your face really glows up when you talk about brain stuff. Like, hey, okay, so this is a question. So how did your love for this topic like came in? This topic as in like brain and like thought process and so.
Well, it started when I started my own healing. So when I was very, very depressed to the point that I was just lying in bed and I didn't want to move, I didn't want to do anything, I didn't want to see anyone. So I started at some point, I made a decision to make a change. And I said, I want to get out of this. And I went to therapy and it really didn't work. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it on my own because that's not working. So I just started Googling different things. And I came across neuroscience and neuro hacking, which was basically saying, okay, there's a way to manipulate your own hormones in your brain and your body. So there were different ways, like to improve your dopamine, to boost your serotonin, to boost your oxytocin, and all the different feel-good hormones. So I started really getting interested in that. And that slowly led me to neuroscience, and that slowly led me to NLP. And now I am into coaching.
Okay, that's amazing. So I want to talk about like your different traumas in your life, and so sorry for the things that I have in my hand. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, what were the major traumas in your life? So other than so I'm pretty sure you had the different traumas in different stages of your life. So would you like to share some with us and like talk about what happened at the time?
Well, one of the main ones was, of course, the childhood ones. So like parents getting divorced, which is, the fear of abandonment and rejection. Then in my teenage years, I had to move 5 different high schools. So, for a teenager, like leaving their friends and starting all over again is quite challenging. And I had to do that 5 times.
I've time in 4 years.
No, 5 times throughout the whole school year. So
Okay.
throughout 10 years, 5 times.
Okay, got it.
What else happened? Then I got married pretty young, and I had to go through my own divorce a few years ago. Then the depression thing happened. Yeah, like I mean, traumas kind of happen. We can't really block ourselves from it, right? But we can learn to accept it and to deal with the emotions on the spot instead of suppressing emotions, which is what I used to do. I used to really not show any emotion. I used to suppress everything, and that ended up in me being in a depression.
Okay. So tell me more about suppressing emotions. So I'm like, so you mentioned like you suppressed emotion in place of dealing with it. So how do you actually define suppressing emotion? Yeah.
Suppressing emotion is basically not letting it out. So, not allowing yourself to feel it, not allowing yourself to express it in the moment that you feel it, and trying to ignore it or push it away. So, for example, when we're small children, see again, it goes back to the childhood. When we're small children, a lot of the times when we're crying or when we want attention or whatever, people or parents, they can tell us to stop crying and they can tell us to, quiet down. And like this, we're learning to not show our emotions. We learn to suppress it. Or later on, something happens, you're having a fight and you're feeling very angry. And instead of expressing this anger, and I'm not saying like punching the people, but just saying, look, I feel angry, blah, blah, blah. So instead of saying that, you may say nothing and just hold it inside of you. And then you're walking around with it. And if it doesn't come out of your system, it stays in your system. And it stays in the system until you let it out. And the more of these events happen where you don't allow yourself to express, you don't allow yourself to express, you keep it in, and then suddenly you're like this walking ball of negative emotion that's inside of you, and that is negative energy. And that negative energy can eventually grow into some sort of illness, like mental illness or even a physical illness. So it's very important to, first of all, acknowledge our emotions when they come and feel them and let them out. In order to release them, you need to either feel them or express them, but have an opening for them to go out.
Okay. So I really have a hard time like actually letting go of my emotions, like let's say expressing my emotions. So what would be your major suggestion for someone who does not know how to let's say express their emotions properly?
So I started with journaling, like literally sitting down at the end of the day or right after the event happened and writing whatever is on my mind. I would be writing, so today this happened and I felt this way. And in the beginning, it felt really stupid. I literally felt like an idiot when I was doing that in the beginning. But the more I was doing it, the more started coming out. And as the more started coming out, I was actually able to express it better. And then with time, I learned to be able to express it verbally, not just writing, but verbally speaking. And with time, I learned to acknowledge it on the spot and be like, okay, I am feeling this emotion, or I'm feeling hurt, or I'm feeling sadness, or I'm feeling anger. Why am I feeling it? And like allow it to be there, and then it comes out.
Okay, so one really interesting thing, at least for me, I can't pop in my head. Okay, so if someone feels an emotion and like feels an emotion and in a way he does not express externally. Okay, so how does feeling your emotion and like let's say because of your like previous experiences, like previous experiences, I mean, uh you know how to deal with it because of it, you know, let's say one thought or like negative thought or experience happened, and internally you resolved it, felt it, and resolved it for by yourself. So what does the difference look like in this scenario, and in case of someone who is suppressing his, like, let's say, feelings, like emotions, like in both cases? So both are like in a way like keeping to themselves, they're not expressing it to others. So is it one better than other, or like is both the same?
So you don't necessarily have to express it to others. This is just one way of getting it out. If you're feeling something happened, and you're feeling, I don't know, frustration, for example, or anger or anxiety, and you feel it inside of you, and in order to process it in the moment, you need to like literally slow down and sit with it and say, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, so acknowledge it. Find out in your body where do you feel it, and it can be different parts of the body, and just stay with it. Stay with it until it's gone. And sometimes it takes 30 seconds, sometimes it takes 5 minutes for it to be gone, but you sit with it and you ask, why are you here and what are you trying to show me? Because every emotion is an indicator of something. Emotions don't come out of the blue. They come for a reason. They're like data, you know? So if you come with it, and if you sit with it and you ask it, okay, what are they trying to show me? Maybe there's a fear of something, or maybe like you felt threatened somewhere, or maybe somebody's like breaking your boundaries and misbehaving, disrespecting you. It could be anything. So as long as you figure out where it's coming from, it usually goes away pretty quickly, and then you don't feel it anymore. So this is scenario number one. Scenario number two is when the same thing happens, you feel the same emotion, but instead of paying attention to it, you're like, okay, I don't want to feel it. So you distract yourself with, I don't know, your phone or some food or whatever it is. It's like instead of sitting with it, you rush and you continue with your day and you don't pay any attention to that. So that would be suppressing. And then that emotion stays in your system. And then it's there. And then a few days later, or 1 week later, or 1 year later, a situation happens that is similar to this event. And then your brain is like, oh, I know this situation. I know that there's a specific emotion associated with it. So let me show it. And then poof, suddenly you have this emotional reaction out of nowhere. So this is what happens when you don't process your emotion, when you suppress them. That's when you start getting triggered by insignificant events, and suddenly you start having crazy emotional reactions. That means you have a lot of suppressed emotions in you.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'd
Does
like
that
to
make sense?
it does. And the reason I like asked that question in the first place is at two, actually, like in a way one, but I'd say two, like, because on one end, I listen in many cases, hey, something bad happened, like it's not good, like something bad happened, I know it, but internally I know, hey, everything that happened, it happened for good.
Mhm.
Yeah, for with that like understanding, uh I don't keep it in myself. However, like that is one case. So I think I think I have dealt with that emotion because I already felt it, and like I know that that thing happened for good. I
Mhm.
can acknowledge it. However, there are also days where I feel bad without any reason. I don't know what happened, what did not happen. It's just I feel bad without any reason, and like I've got no clue why I'm sad. I'm just sad. Like
Mhm.
my mood is off. I Nothing happened. Suddenly on a day in a few months, or like few weeks, you got no clue. And the next day everything's good as well. Like good as always. So because
Mhm.
of these two events, like I asked that question. So what's your reflection on both of these?
Mhm. So the first one, I think because you're acknowledging the emotion, and that's why it's easier for you to let go of it, right?
Yeah.
So you acknowledge the emotion, and you acknowledge that, okay, that happened, and I learned
Happened.
this from that. So as long as you learn something from it and acknowledge the emotion, then it will go. right? And then the second scenario, sometimes we do have, I agree, I also have these days when I'm just like, bleh. I don't want to do anything, like nothing is good, and then just leave me alone. I have those days too. And it could be, and those are actually the best days to journal, because you can really go deep and you can really discover some things. And it could be like a few things actually. One thing could be that the sadness is there because you have sort of like this quiet time. So this suppressed emotion of sadness from the past is like, oh, I have an opening, I can come now. And it's coming for you to heal. It's basically showing up for you to heal it. And it's up to you to understand where it's coming from. So this could be number one. And number two, which is a bit less complicated, is just you're low on good chemicals in your brain. And you're probably out of dopamine, you're probably out of serotonin, and you just need to eat something good and go for like a little walk outside. And often that's enough to fix your state. But if you feel that the sadness continues, even after you like try to break your state and move your body and eat something nice, and by nice I mean healthy, not sugar, but healthy things.
Not junk food, like healthy foods. Healthy.
No junk food. If you want serotonin, you need to eat healthy food, because serotonin is produced in your gut, not in your brain. So yeah, and if just doing those things doesn't break your state, if the sadness is still there, that it probably means that it's very deep, and that it's just coming out for you to heal it.
Okay, that's really interesting insight. Okay. So we are kindly almost out of time here. So I'll keep things very short from this end, from my end. Okay. So tell me about what is your biggest lesson in life that help in your darkest period of time?
Oof. Well, let me think about that one. The lesson that helped me through darkest period of time. I mean, it was a pretty long time, right? So it's hard to pick just one. But I would say the biggest lesson was to recognize that what I was feeling during those darkest periods of times, it was a gift. And it was literally what I said. It showed up for me to show me that something is wrong and that I need to heal it. If that depression didn't show up in my life, I would probably have continued living the way I was living, and I don't know what would happen then. I don't want to think what would happen, but depression kind of forced me to stop everything and go inward and really take a good look at what am I doing with my life, what am I doing with myself, and start the healing process. So the biggest lesson, I would say, pay attention to your feelings and emotions, because they are there for a reason. They're there to show you something, to teach you something. Be very careful with that. Really pay attention to that.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so I want you to reflect on the statement that you said. So how was your feeling when you said the last statement that you said?
How was I feeling?
Yeah, how was the feeling when you thought about the biggest lesson and said it?
I'm kind of neutral.
Kind of.
Neutral. I mean,
Okay.
I've been excited the whole conversation, so I'm still excited.
Okay, then that's great. Okay, so we have run out of time. We could have a longer session. However, like because of technical difficulties from my end, we had to like keep things up pretty short. Okay, so without like making any more mess, so so
Mess is fine.
yeah,
Mess is part of the experience.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's make more mess. However, not today. I hope not today. Okay, okay. So where can our listeners find you, listeners or viewers find you online?
Online, I am primarily on Instagram, and my handle is at conscious_sapiens. I did choose the most difficult word to to name my brand. So I don't know if you can add it in the notes of this episode.
I will.
Conscious_sapiens on Instagram is my page. And before we wrap up, I just want to add that for your listeners, if anybody is interested, I do offer free coaching sessions this month. So you can find that in the link in my bio in my Instagram profile.
Okay. So the links would be in the description. So the way that mentioned. So the links would be in the descriptions,
Yes.
description of the platform we are listening or seeing this at.
Yeah.
And that's about it for today. However, like before we end, so this is one question from you. So why did you choose saplings?
Sapiens?
Yeah.
Well, technically, it should be homo conscious if you look at the exact translation of the words, right? The idea was that Homo sapiens means is our current race, and I feel that majority of population today are living very unconsciously. And my mission with my business is to help to get as many people as I can become more aware, self-aware, and conscious about themselves and the world in general, because I feel that the people who are doing the work and the people who are doing personal development, they're not the kind of people who are like walking around and being angry and starting wars, you know? So I want our race in general to become more conscious in general. And homo conscious didn't sound well, so I went for conscious sapiens.
Okay. Conscious sapiens. Got it. So the with that, okay. So the links of what or the things that you mentioned will be in the description of it. Again, so before we end it, so our today's guest was Sasha Tarasova. And sorry, I'm having a hard time pronouncing. I'm very sorry for that. And she is a transformation life coach, NLP practitioner, creator of Conscious Sapiens, and an artist and a DJ. So by saying that, this was your host A Mahmoud, and that's about it for today. And we're signing off. Bye.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, welcome and bye.
And that's the end of today's episode. I know taking action is quite a hard job to do, so I hope the advice and insights we got today will help you to take the leap of faith and pursue your dreams. You can share your story with us through the first link in the description box, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on the Apple Podcast. We will come back with another episode. Till then, keep healing, learning, and growing. Thank you.